Are Labour on the verge of a great betrayal? When you think of the Labour Party, traditionally you think the party of the people. You know, the party that puts working people first and the elite's interests second, not the party that puts profit before the people. In an effort to try and attract some new financial services investment to the UK, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves, said the following: "We are pushing the regulators to demonstrate that they are taking seriously the competitiveness of our financial services sector. One of the commitments is to go through the rulebook and tear up rules that are unnecessary or duplicative, and we're determined to do that." Now, I'm in favour of deregulation, absolutely. If the rules that are in place don't make any sense at all, then get rid of them, because there's no point in them being there. So yeah, cut down on regulation where appropriate. But do not get rid of regulations that do serve a purpose and are there to help protect people. Scamming and fraud has been an example where regulation has been needed in the UK for a long time. In the UK alone, millions of consumers have been dogged by scammers, with losses mounting to £460 million last year. It's a big problem in the UK, and it needs addressing. Thankfully, there was a plan in place. The Payment Systems Regulator, or PSR, is due to launch a mandatory scheme that will mean the vast majority of push payment scam victims will get their money back promptly if they are targeted by fraudsters. And that's good, because it's not the fault of the person being scammed that money has been taken out of their accounts. It's a weakness in the bank system that's done that, and it's also a weakness in failing to crack down on social media companies that may be promoting these scams. For example, according to Yahoo Finance, Lloyds Bank said that tens of thousands of credit and debit card customers had fallen victim to fake website scams in the last year alone, losing £55 on average. It warned that rogue retailers were using social media to advertise fake websites that mimicked popular brands. So working with social media companies to crack down on these scams being promoted is an absolute must. But also, we need to address any weaknesses in the bank system that allows for these payments to take place. And one way to get the banks to crack down on these weaknesses is through this new scheme that makes it mandatory for them to reimburse any genuine victims of fraud. But if Miss Reeves' plan involves cutting down on regulation designed to be a safety net to help everyday customers, then that's a big red flag. There are fears that it may back away from this proposal at the very last minute due to intense public pressure from parts of the finance industry, which has now taken lobbying to Chancellor Rachel Reeves and City Minister Tulip Siddiq in the hope that it will urge the independent regulator to abandon its plans. Really? She would rather favour the bankers and inflate the City of London even more than protect the everyday customer of banking services? Well, that's the last thing I expected, especially from a Labour Chancellor. Well, the reimbursement scheme is set to launch in October, so let's see where Labour go with this. Let's see if they decide to press ahead with the scheme, or if they decide to roll it back. It'll be fascinating to see where their priorities lie. But that's not the only thing as to why Labour's being accused of betrayal. The National has reported that the Labour Party is accused of betrayal because energy prices are set to soar. And this is despite repeatedly pledging during the campaign to reduce energy bills. But Ofgem have now announced a rise to the price cap. Let's dive in and take a full in-depth look at this. In June, Chancellor Rachel Reeves said a Labour government would help families save up to £300 off energy bills by 2030 and tackle the root causes of the cost of living crisis. In the same month, Prime Minister Keir Starmer pledged to cut bills, create jobs and provide energy security, as he set out how Great British Energy, a planned publicly owned energy company, will bring down energy costs. But even more questions are now being fired at Labour after Ofgem announced average household energy bills will increase by £149 from October, which follows on from Labour cutting the universal winter fuel payment for pensioners. Yet again, I think it's another example of saying something to get elected but not actually telling us the full story. Now, I may need to research this, but I cannot remember Labour mentioning once that they were first going to raise energy prices in order to try and get to a position where they could then reduce them. I mean, the cost of living is pretty brutal at the minute, so the fact that we now have to pay an extra £149 in energy bills, despite your pledge to reduce them, not a great way to win public confidence. And if the argument from the Labour Party is there's no money available and we need to raise money, well, hang on a second. Rachel Reeves and Labour are prepared to bring back a private finance initiative for a new Thames crossing. And famously, Tony Blair's Labour governments funneled billions of pounds of public money to boss us through these PFI schemes. And this has been quoted at £9 billion, so there is money. But what on earth do we need this Thames crossing for? It's just an example of money being allocated to the wrong areas. And that's ignoring the whole aspect of PFI schemes, which I'm no fan of, to be honest with you. It has the taxpayer on the hook for years on end at high interest rates for God knows how long. In one famous case, a multinational firm in a PFI scheme billed the NHS hundreds of pounds just to change a light bulb. And now Labour seem intent on bringing this policy back into the mainstream? Happy days. And it's got to a point where Starmer and Reeves' leadership is so bad that even The Guardian appears to be turning against them. I mean, look at this as a headline from The Guardian. Why are Starmer and Reeves so determined to bring Britain down? It speaks volumes if The Guardian, probably one of the more left-wing newspapers in the UK, is now suddenly turning against a left-wing leadership. But the last one I want to touch on is the recent policy announcement that they're going to ban smoking in pub gardens, with contingency to extend this to sports stadiums and parks. Actually, no, scratch that. The plan, hatched in collusion with Chris Whitty, the chief medical officer, looks at introducing a smoking ban in many public spaces: pub and club gardens, restaurant terraces, playgrounds, sports grounds, streets outside hospitals, nightclubs, schools and universities. Basically a large chunk of the UK where people want to go enjoy themselves and have fun. Now, I have no skin in this game. I'm not a smoker. I don't smoke casually, socially, occasionally, I don't. But what on earth happened to freedom of choice? What on earth happened to letting people decide if they wanted to go out for a drink or go have a smoke? It's been the norm for people to go out and smoke in all of these different places. And now you're going to try and ban them? Really? I understand the health burdens behind it. It's one of the reasons why I don't smoke in the first place. But for people who just do it socially or occasionally, you've got to remember it's part of the local culture. And you're asking them to change overnight. That's going to impact all the people in this country. And it's going to impact the pub industry most of all. The proposals prompted warnings that as many as 1 in 8 pubs could be forced to close, as smokers opt to stay at home. Industry groups said many were already teetering on the edge after the COVID lockdowns and the cost of living crisis. Emma McClarkin, the head of the British Beer and Pub Association, called the plans a misguided restriction on pubs as social spaces, adding it's deeply concerning and difficult to understand why the government would bring forward proposals that will be yet another blow to the viability of our nation's vital community assets. But again, similar to the whole topic of free speech and misinformation we covered in an earlier video, how far are we going to go with this? Is this going to turn from a smoking ban into an alcohol ban? Because we're going to operate on health-related illnesses. If smoking causes health illnesses, does alcohol cause health illnesses? Are we going to ban alcohol in this country? That would be a massive betrayal to the British way of life. And that could result in many pubs and many businesses, as a matter of fact, going under. Because if they can't sell alcohol, which is something that is craved across the entire nation, then that's a big problem. It's a big loss of tax revenue. It's a big loss of a source of enjoyment. And it's a big attack, as mentioned before, on the British way of life. I hope that's not where we're going with this, because it would make for a very miserable time across Britain, and I feel a lot of people would revolt over that. Don't ban smoking and alcohol, Mr. Starmer. If you're going to make us miserable over the next 5 years as it is, at least let us get some enjoyment by smoking and drinking. But there you go. Again, we're only 2 months in. We've got another 4 years and 10 months to go until the next election, so we best gear up for whatever's about to happen, because I have a feeling we're going to remember this for some time. Thank you all for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Drop a comment down below. I'd love to interact with as many of you as possible. I'll be returning in the coming weeks with more content, of course, but until then, stay safe, stay blessed, stay free. Have a drink on me. I'll see you all real soon. Take care.